Okay, so you know that S, right? The kind of pointy, cool-looking one?
Yeah.
It was everywhere, like notebooks, desks, everywhere.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Super res, Pointy S. Some people even called it the Stüssy S.
Right.
That's our deep dive today.
Cool.
We're going to look into why this thing was everywhere and maybe where it came from for you.
It's one of those things that you just kind of knew.
Right.
Like tying your shoes, you know.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, our goal today is to kind of explore its roots and why it's still around based on what we can find out, basically.
Yeah, I remember, like, where'd you first see this thing? For me, it just kind of appeared one day.
Right.
But there's this idea that it might be older than we think, right?
Yeah, what's kind of crazy is when you start looking into it, you find these little hints of it in places you wouldn't expect.
Yeah.
Like engravings from the 1800s, even some details in like medieval manuscripts.
Wow.
It kind of suggests that this basic shape, these lines, have been around for a long, long time.
So from like medieval times to like doodles in our notebooks.
Yeah.
Wild.
Pretty much, yeah.
But when did it really take off, like, in our memory? Like, the 70s, 80s kind of feel important for this.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
With the whole rise of graffiti in the 70s and 80s, you started seeing versions of the S on the streets.
Yeah.
It makes sense that that kind of put it out there, and then it blew up in schools later.
Yeah, and it really did explode. Like, lunch tables, in the margins of our homework, it was everywhere in the 80s and 90s.
Everywhere, yeah.
And what's so weird is, like, no one taught you how to draw it. It just happened.
Yeah, and that's kind of the key to this whole thing, right? How it just spread on its own.
Yeah, yeah.
Makes you wonder what made this shape so popular.
Well, it's simple, right? It's just lines. But it also had this, like, futuristic, kind of edgy feel to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
The simplicity definitely made it easy to copy, which is huge for something spreading like this.
Yeah.
But the way the lines like lock together, it creates this kind of optical illusion, a sense of depth that's really cool to look at.
Yeah.
And of course, that connection to street art definitely made it cooler for kids and teenagers.
Totally. And it wasn't like a logo for anything specific. It was just like the S.
Exactly.
That must help it spread too.
It did, because it didn't have any set meaning or brand attached to it. It was like universally adaptable.
Yeah.
Anyone could draw it anywhere, and it didn't mean you were part of one group or believed in one thing.
Right.
It was just the S.
Okay, now the Stüssy thing. A lot of people connect this S to the clothing brand.
Yeah, it's a really common thought, and I get it.
Yeah.
Both what we call the cool S and the Stüssy brand were big in youth culture back in the late 80s and 90s.
Right.
Same scenes, like skateboarding, hip hop, all that.
Yeah, yeah.
But the thing is, Stüssy has never actually used this specific S as their logo.
Huh. So it's more of a like cultural overlap then.
Exactly.
They were just in the same
Yo.
like vibe.
Yeah.
Okay.
They were both around in the same spaces and time, so it makes sense that people would connect them.
That makes sense.
Even though it's not like officially a Stüssy thing.
Gotcha. And even now, you see it pop up online.
Oh yeah.
It's got staying power.
Big time. The internet loves nostalgia, right?
Uh-huh.
And meme culture has definitely given the cool S a whole new life. You see it in art these days. Even fashion that's inspired by those earlier decades.
Yeah.
Shows how these visual things can keep coming back around.
Which brings us to the big question, I guess, the mystery.
Yeah.
Who actually drew the first one, and how did it get everywhere before the internet?
That's the really fascinating part.
Yeah.
In a world where it feels like everything is documented, the fact that we don't know where the cool S came from is kind of amazing.
Yeah, it really is.
It's a true example of like pure artistic expression spreading from person to person without any one source. A lot like early music or graffiti, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. So I guess the key takeaways are, no one knows for sure who made it. It's probably connected to older art forms and graffiti. It's simple but cool design, and the fact that it doesn't mean anything specific made it super popular. And the Stüssy link is a myth,
Pretty much, yeah.
but the origin story is still a blank page.
A total mystery. And it makes you think, doesn't it?
About?
Well, what does it mean when something so simple, something no one takes credit for, becomes so popular and sticks around for so long?
Yeah.
Think about the power of a basic visual idea.
Yeah.
And how it can like grab hold of people and spread on its own, become part of our shared culture. It's just a few lines, but it makes you ask bigger questions about how culture works.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Really makes you think.
It does, yeah.
Subscribe to my channel.